I always believed my family was just like everyone else. Not perfect, but holding it together in that messy, unspoken way most families do. We had our ups and downs, arguments about who left the milk out or why the electric bill was higher this month, but there was always this underlying assumption that we were on the same side. Against the world, you know? We lived in a modest, two-story house in a quiet part of Ohio. Nothing fancy, peeling paint on the porch, a stubborn leak in the upstairs bathroom that Dad swore he'd fix next weekend for the last 2 years. But it was ours. Or at least, I thought it was. My parents worked hard. Mom was a receptionist at a dental office. Dad drove trucks for a distribution company, sometimes gone for days at a time. I was the responsible one, as everyone liked to call me, a straight A student, the girl who never missed curfew, who had her life planned out in neat little steps. College first, then grad school, then a stable career. College had always been my dream. Not just for me, but for us. I used to picture walking across the stage at graduation with my parents in the front row, tears in their eyes because their hard work had paid off. We didn't have a lot, but I knew, or I thought I knew, that they were putting aside money for my future. They'd even open a college savings account for me when I was 10. Every birthday card from grandma, every babysitting dollar I earned, every little bit went into that account. It wasn't just money, it was trust. It was the symbol of all their promises to me. Things weren't easy, of course. Dad's hours got cut sometimes. Mom would come home exhausted, her hands aching from typing all day. We'd eat budget dinners, pasta, tuna casserole, whatever we could stretch. And when I'd ask if everything was okay, they'd smile that tired smile and say, "We're just struggling like everyone else, honey." I believed them. Why wouldn't I? The only real tension in our house seemed to come from my older brother, Tyler. He was complicated, charming one minute, infuriating the next. He'd been the golden boy when we were kids, football captain in high school, always surrounded by friends. But after graduation, he didn't go to college. He bounced from one dead-end job to another, never lasting more than a few months. Whenever things went wrong for him, somehow it wasn't his fault. He still lived at home at 24, taking over the basement like it was his own bachelor pad. Sometimes I hear him on the phone late at night, talking in this low, urgent voice. I assumed it was about money. He was always asking Mom and Dad for a little help until his next paycheck. They'd get tense whenever I asked about it, so I stopped asking. I thought I understood the dynamics of my family. I thought I knew the lines, who played what role, who carried which burdens. I had no idea how wrong I was. It all started to unravel the summer before my senior year of high school. That was when I got my first real taste of independence, my own part-time job at the library. I loved it. The quiet hum of the computers, the smell of old books, the little paycheck that came every 2 weeks. Every dollar I earned, I deposited straight into my college account. It felt good. Safe. Like I was building my own future brick by brick. Then one afternoon, I logged into my account to check my balance. I hadn't done it in a while. I wasn't obsessive about it, just curious to see how much it had grown. But when the page loaded, I felt my stomach twist. The number staring back at me was wrong. It was smaller. A lot smaller. I blinked, convinced I'd misread it. I even refreshed the page, thinking maybe the website glitched. But no, the balance was definitely lower than it had been the last time I checked. A cold rush went through me. My heart started pounding, but my brain scrambled for reasonable explanations. Maybe it was some kind of bank error. Maybe there had been fees I didn't know about. I clicked on the transaction history tab, my fingers shaking. That's when I saw it. Multiple withdrawals. Large ones. Spread out over months. All labeled transfer to checking. Our checking account. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was just some kind of automatic transfer I didn't know about. But as I scrolled, the dates started to line up in my mind with things that had happened in our house. The new tires for Tyler's car, The mysterious bills Dad mentioned, the sudden, tense silences at dinner. And then the withdrawals got bigger. I stared at the screen for so long I didn't even notice the tears until they blurred the numbers. My hands were ice cold, but my face felt like it was burning. I didn't understand. Why would they take my money? This wasn't just cash lying around. This was my future. This was everything I'd worked for. By the time I heard Mom's car pull into the driveway, my whole body was shaking. I didn't even know how to bring it up. How do you ask your parents if they've been stealing from you without your voice breaking? She walked into the kitchen, dropping her purse on the counter. Hey, honey. What's wrong? You look pale. I swallowed hard. Mom, did you take money from my college account? Her eyes widened just enough for me to notice before she forced a smile. What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. Because I checked it today, and it's missing thousands of dollars. And the bank says it was transferred to our checking account. She froze for a split second, then looked away. Oh, that. Well, things have been tight lately. We just needed to borrow some, that's all. We'll put it back before you need it. Borrow? That word hit me harder than anything. Because it wasn't theirs to borrow. And deep down, I knew they weren't planning to put it back. Something had cracked open in that moment, though I didn't realize how deep the fracture went. This wasn't about a few missing dollars. This was about trust, the kind that, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. I just didn't know yet how bad it would get, or how much more they were hiding from me. After Mom's "we'll put it back before you need it" excuse, I wanted to believe her. I really did. A part of me still clung to the idea that my parents would never actually betray me in a way that mattered. That this was just a temporary setback. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. It wasn't just that they seemed more on edge than usual. It was the way they avoided certain topics altogether. If I mentioned college, Mom would change the subject. If I asked about the money, Dad would sigh heavily and say, "We're doing our best, okay? Just focus on school." And Tyler? Well, Tyler suddenly had new sneakers, a fresh haircut, and was going out more than ever. He'd come home at 2 in the morning, smelling like cigarettes and cheap cologne. I'd hear his phone buzz constantly, but whenever I walked into the room, he'd shove it in his pocket. It was like living with a family of strangers. One Friday night, I was at the kitchen table doing homework when Tyler burst through the front door, grinning ear to ear. "What's up, sis?" he said, ruffling my hair like he always did when he wanted to seem like the fun big brother. I swatted his hand away. "You're in a good mood." "Yeah, well, I've had a good night." He tossed his jacket over a chair and opened the fridge, pulling out a soda. "Made some extra cash." I frowned. "How?" He smirked, taking a long sip. "Let's just say I'm good at making the right bets." At the time, I didn't fully connect the dots. Gambling wasn't something that crossed my mind. It seemed like an adult problem, something distant and irrelevant. But the word bets lodged itself in the back of my mind like a splinter. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. I thought about those large withdrawals from my college account, about the tension in the house, about Tyler's late-night phone calls and sudden bursts of cash. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee, still in his work clothes from the overnight shift. I sat down across from him, my hands gripping the mug of tea I'd made just to have something to do with them. "Dad," I said slowly, "I need to know the truth. About the money." He looked up, his expression tired but sharp. "Your mom already told you. We borrowed it. End of story." "No," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "Not end of story. I've worked for years to save that money. I have a right to know why it's gone." "Where did it actually go?" For a moment, I thought he might yell. His jaw tightened, his fingers drummed against the table. Then he leaned back inside, looking more defeated than angry. "It was for your brother," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Tyler? He got in a little trouble. Owed some money to people you don't want to mess with. We couldn't just let him sink. So, we used the savings. Just until we can get ahead again. The words barely registered because my mind was stuck on one thing. Owed money to people you don't want to mess with. What kind of trouble? I asked. Dad hesitated, then muttered, gambling. And there it was, the missing puzzle piece that made everything click together in the worst way. I stared at him, unable to find words. My brother had gambled away God knows how much, and instead of letting him face the consequences, my parents had raided my future to bail him out. You took my money to cover his mistakes? My voice cracked despite my best effort to keep it steady. Family takes care of family, Dad said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I wanted to scream. Family takes care of family, sure. But where was that care when it came to me? Where was my safety net? Before I could say anything else, Tyler walked into the kitchen, yawning like he'd just rolled out of bed. Morning, he said, grabbing a bowl of cereal. I looked at him, at his easy, careless posture, the way he didn't seem to feel the weight of any of this, and something inside me snapped. How could you? I blurted out. He froze mid-bite. How could I what? Gamble away so much money that Mom and Dad had to steal from my college fund to cover for you. Dad's head shot up. That's enough, Emily. No, it's not enough, I said, my voice shaking now. Do you have any idea what that money meant to me? How hard I worked for it? Or do you just think you're entitled to take whatever you want because Mom and Dad will clean up your mess? Tyler's face darkened. You don't understand, okay? It's not that simple. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said bitterly. You screw up, and we all pay for it. That's the story of your life, isn't it? He slammed his bowl down so hard milk sloshed onto the counter. You think you're better than me just because you've got your little perfect grades and your precious college fund? Newsflash, Emily, life's not fair. Get over it. And then he stormed out, the basement door slamming behind him. I sat there, staring at the milk dripping off the counter, my whole body trembling. Dad didn't say anything. He just got up, rinsed his coffee mug, and left the room. The rest of the day felt like moving through fog. I went to work at the library, smiled at patrons, shelved books, but inside, I was replaying that conversation over and over. Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the realization that in my family, I wasn't the priority. I was the backup plan. The resource to be tapped when someone else messed up. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sound of Tyler's music from the basement. I wondered if my parents had any idea how much they'd damaged my trust. Or maybe they didn't care. Maybe in their minds, they'd done the right thing, and I was just too selfish to see it. But I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. I needed to know just how deep this went. How much they'd taken. And whether they planned to take more. Because if they thought I'd just let this slide, they didn't know me as well as they thought. After that blow up in the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd only scratched the surface of whatever my family was hiding. My parents' vague excuses. Tyler's defensiveness. The fact that no one seemed the least bit sorry. It wasn't just my college fund at risk anymore. It was the ugly possibility that they'd keep taking until there was nothing left. I decided I needed facts. Cold, undeniable facts. The first place I looked was the bank. On Monday afternoon, instead of going straight home from school, I stopped by the branch where my account was held. My hands felt clammy as I waited in line, imagining the teller frowning and saying, "Sorry, miss, that account's been closed." When it was my turn, I asked for a printed statement going back 2 years. The woman behind the counter smiled politely as she clicked away on her keyboard, oblivious to the storm swirling inside me. She slid the papers across the counter, and I walked out with them tucked under my arm like they were contraband. I sat in my car and started reading. The pattern was unmistakable: small deposits here and there from me, birthday money from relatives, paychecks from my library job. Then the withdrawals started. At first, they were spaced out, $300 here, $500 there. But over the last 6 months, they'd gotten bolder. $1,000 at a time, sometimes twice in the same week. And the dates. The dates matched perfectly with weekends when Tyler had been out with friends or mysteriously flush with cash. By the time I got to the last page, my hands were shaking with a mix of fury and disbelief. Over $7,000 gone. 7,000. That wasn't borrowing. That was draining. That night at dinner, I sat across from my parents with the statement folded in my lap. I waited until Tyler had left for the basement before I spoke. I went to the bank today, I said evenly. Mom looked up from her plate. Oh? I got the full transaction history from my college account. The room went quiet. Dad's fork hovered mid-air. I unfolded the papers and laid them on the table. Do you want to explain how over $7,000 of my money ended up in our checking account? Mom sighed, her eyes darting to Dad. Emily. No. I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. Don't say you borrowed it. This isn't a couple $100 to tide you over. This is years of work. My future. Dad leaned back in his chair. We didn't have a choice. Tyler was in trouble. I stared at him. Then maybe Tyler should have dealt with the consequences instead of you robbing your daughter to save him. His jaw clenched. You watch your tone. My tone? I laughed, but it came out bitter. I'm supposed to be polite while you admit you stole from me? Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Sweetheart, we were scared. The people he owed. They were dangerous. They came to the house once when you weren't here. The thought made my stomach twist, strangers showing up at our door, threatening my family. But it didn't erase the fact that they'd chosen to protect Tyler at my expense. Why didn't you call the police? I asked. Dad shook his head. That would have made things worse. We just needed to make it go away. I pushed my chair back. Well, congratulations. You made it go away for him. But you made it impossible for me. I left the table before they could say another word. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out my next move. Part of me wanted to just give up, except that the money was gone and focus on rebuilding it. But another part burned with the need to know just how bad Tyler's situation really was. I decided to start with the obvious, his phone. The next morning, I timed it perfectly. Tyler stumbled upstairs half asleep, muttering about needing coffee, and left his phone charging on the counter. The moment he went to the bathroom, I grabbed it. It wasn't even locked, just a swipe and I was in. The text messages told me everything I needed to know. There were conversations with someone named Big Mike, filled with phrases like you owe me and last chance. Pictures of poker tables. Screenshots of sports betting apps. And most chillingly, a message from just a week ago. If you don't have the money by Friday, I'm coming to collect in person. My heart pounded as I put the phone back exactly where I found it. This wasn't just bad, it was dangerous. And my parents weren't just complicit. They were actively covering for him. That evening, when Tyler was out, I confronted Mom again in the kitchen. I saw his messages, I said. He's still gambling. He's still in debt. So what's the plan now? Steal the rest of my savings? Take out a second mortgage? How far are you willing to go before you realize you're just enabling him? Her face paled. Emily, you don't understand. No, I interrupted. I understand perfectly. You've decided his mistakes matter more than my future. And you think that's okay because he's your son. Well, guess what? So am I. Her lip trembled, but she didn't argue. She just turned back to the sink, rinsing dishes like the conversation hadn't happened. That was when I realized I wasn't going to get through to them. Not with words. If I wanted to protect what little I had left, I'd have to take matters into my own hands. The next day, I went to the bank again and moved the remaining balance, a little over $2,000, into a separate account in my name only. No joint access. No online transfers to the checking account. I even opened it at a different bank across town. It felt like a small victory, but the fear lingered. If Tyler really was in over his head with dangerous people, there was no telling what they might do next. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the last time his problems would spill over into my life. Because in our family, problems didn't stay contained. They spread, infecting everyone around them, until you either cut them off completely or let them pull you under. It happened on a Thursday night. I'd just gotten home from my shift at the library. My backpack was still on my shoulder when I noticed the living room lights were off, even though my parents' cars were in the driveway. The house felt off, too quiet. I walked in and set my bag down, calling out, "Mom? Dad?" No answer. I was halfway to the kitchen when I heard voices, low, tense voices, coming from the front porch. I crept toward the sound and peeked through the narrow space between the blinds. Two men stood there. One was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a leather jacket. The other was shorter, with a shaved head and a cigarette dangling from his lips. Dad was standing in the doorway, blocking them from coming inside. "Look, I told you, we just need a little more time," Dad was saying, his voice tight. "You've been saying that for weeks," the tall one replied. "Your boy's out of chances. You either pay up or things get messy." My stomach clenched. I didn't need them to say Tyler's name to know who they were talking about. Dad glanced over his shoulder, like he was checking if anyone was listening, then said, "We're working on it. Just give us until next Friday." The shorter guy exhaled smoke in his face. "Friday, huh? Fine. But if we don't have the money by then, we're coming back. And we won't be knocking next time." They turned and walked down the steps. I ducked away from the blinds, heart pounding. When the door closed, I stayed frozen in the hallway until Dad came inside. He looked startled to see me standing there. "What was that about?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Nothing you need to worry about. Don't lie to me. Those were Tyler's debt collectors, weren't they?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I felt my hands curl into fists. "You're still trying to cover for him. Even after everything. You're just going to keep throwing money at the problem until there's nothing left." "Emily. No. You think you're protecting him, but you're just digging a deeper hole. And you're dragging me down with you." Dad's jaw tightened. "It's our family, Emily. We handle things together." "Family?" I said, my voice breaking. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't ruin one person's future to save another from their own bad decisions." I didn't wait for his response. I grabbed my bag and went upstairs, slamming my bedroom door. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those men standing on the porch, their shadows stretching across the driveway. The threat in their voices echoed in my ears. I knew my parents wouldn't have the money by Friday. And I knew what would happen when those men came back. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was done playing the passive role in this disaster. If my parents wouldn't take real action, I would. The first step was finding Tyler. He hadn't come home the night before, which wasn't unusual. But I had a good idea where he might be. There was a dingy bar on the edge of town he liked to haunt. The kind of place with neon beer signs and no questions asked. I drove there after school, my stomach in knots. Sure enough, his beat-up sedan was parked out front. I found him inside at a corner table, hunched over a deck of cards with three other guys. A pile of crumpled bills sat in the middle. When he saw me, his face darkened. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice low. He groaned. "This isn't a good time." "No, Tyler. This is exactly the time. Those guys you owe money to? They came to the house last night. They threatened Dad." He winced, but then shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. "They're just trying to scare you. It's how they work." "Scare me?" I leaned closer, my voice shaking. "Tyler, they're not bluffing. If you don't pay them, they're going to do something you can't talk your way out of. And Mom and Dad are killing themselves to protect you." He looked away. "I'm working on it." "No," I said firmly. "You're gambling more to try to fix your gambling debt." That's not working on it. That's making it worse. His silence told me I was right. Here's the deal, I said, my voice low and steady. You're going to tell them you can't pay right now, but you're working on a legal repayment plan. No more betting, no more games. If you don't, I'm going to the police. His head snapped up. You wouldn't. Try me, I said. I've got enough proof to back it up. Your text, your betting apps, the bank withdrawals. You can either get clean now or deal with the law later. He stared at me for a long moment, then muttered, Fine. But I didn't trust him. The next day, I went to the bank again and withdrew $1,500 from my own hidden account, not to give to him, but to have as emergency cash in case things got ugly when those men came back. Sure enough, Friday night came, and so did they. I heard the knock from upstairs and my stomach clenched. I grabbed the envelope of cash and slipped it into my hoodie pocket before going downstairs. Dad was already at the door, blocking it like before. We don't have the full amount yet, he said. That's a shame, the tall one replied, stepping forward. I took a deep breath and stepped into view. I have some. All three of them looked at me, my dad in shock, the men with sudden interest. It's not the full amount, I said, pulling out the envelope, but it's enough to keep you from showing up here again for a while. The tall one took it, flipping through the bills. Not bad, kid. But we'll be back for the rest. As they walked away, I felt my dad's eyes burning into me. What the hell was that? He demanded as soon as the door shut. That, I said, was me buying us time. Now you have a week to figure out how to fix this without stealing from me again. He didn't say anything, just stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. The truth was, I didn't recognize myself either. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my family's mess destroy me completely. After the men left that night, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. I could still feel the weight of the envelope leaving my hands, the strange mixture of relief and guilt that came with it. I'd bought us time, but time wasn't the same as safety. And safety wasn't the same as trust. That finally broke the silence. You shouldn't have gotten involved. I stared at him. I've been involved since the day you took my money. Mom came out from the kitchen, wringing a dish towel in her hands. Emily, we're sorry, but... I shook my head. No, you're not sorry. You're scared. And you're desperate. And instead of dealing with the problem, you've been feeding it. Tyler emerged from the basement, rubbing the back of his neck. I heard voices. What happened? I turned to him, the words coming out colder than I expected. I gave them $1,500 so they wouldn't hurt Dad. You're welcome. He froze, then let out a low whistle. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I said. I did. Because if I didn't, you'd keep pretending this is just bad luck instead of your own fault. For a long moment, none of us said anything. We just stood there, four people in the same house who felt more like strangers than family. That night, I lay awake, my mind running through every memory I had of my family. The birthday dinners. The road trips. The times we'd laughed so hard our sides hurt. And then the fights. The excuses. The lies. It hit me, slowly but painfully, that the family I'd believed in for so long had been more of an idea than a reality. By sunrise, my decision was made. The next morning, I packed a duffel bag with clothes, my laptop, and the folder where I kept all my important papers. I left the rest, the posters on my wall, the books on my shelves, because they didn't matter as much as what I was taking, my freedom. When I came downstairs, Mom was in the kitchen making coffee. She looked at the bag in my hand and frowned. Where are you going? To stay with Aunt Lisa for a while, I said. Her eyes widened. You can't just leave. I can, I said quietly. And I have to. I can't keep living in a house where my future is an afterthought. She opened her mouth to protest, but I kept going. I love you, Mom. And I love Dad. And I even love Tyler, though I wish I didn't right now. But love isn't the same as letting yourself be used. I've worked too hard to let this keep happening. Dad came in then, looking at me with that stubborn set to his jaw. Running away won't solve anything. This isn't running away, I said. It's stepping out of the line of fire. You're choosing to protect Tyler no matter the cost. I'm choosing not to be collateral damage. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his hair messy, his eyes red. So, that's it? You're just done with us? I met his gaze, my chest tightening. I'm done letting your problems become my problems. If you ever decide to actually fix your life, I'll be there. But until then, I can't. The drive to Aunt Lisa's felt surreal. The streets I'd grown up on, the corner store where I'd bought popsicles as a kid, the park where Dad had pushed me on the swings, all blurred past like pieces of someone else's life. When I pulled into her driveway, Aunt Lisa came out to greet me. She didn't ask questions right away. She just hugged me. Later, over mugs of tea, I told her everything, the stolen money, the debt collectors, the endless excuses. She listened without interrupting, her face a mix of shock and anger. When I finished, she said, "You did the right thing coming here. I'll help you figure out the rest." It was the first time in months I felt like someone was on my side without an agenda. Over the next week, I started piecing together a new plan. I picked up extra hours at the library. I researched scholarships and work-study programs. I even met with a financial aid advisor at the community college who told me I could start there and transfer later to save money. It wasn't the path I'd imagined, but it was mine. And that made it worth it. My parents called a few times. I answered once or twice, but the conversations were stiff. They asked when I was coming home. I said I didn't know. Tyler texted me once, just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. 2 weeks after I left, I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was $500 in cash and a note in Tyler's messy handwriting. "This is the first payment. I'm trying." I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to believe it. But I tucked the money into my new bank account anyway. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I wasn't counting on him anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about what might have happened if I'd stayed. Maybe I'd have been there when the debt collectors came back. Maybe my parents would have drained every last cent I had. Or maybe I'd still be sitting at that dinner table, waiting for an apology that was never going to come. Instead, I'm here, rebuilding, slowly but surely. I'm not naive enough to think I can cut my family out of my heart completely. But I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Sometimes loving your family means keeping your distance. And sometimes protecting your future means walking away from the people you thought would protect you.